I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyourear for details.
This is Word Down Your Way, in which those about to tour salute you.
Welcome to another of these, and the man who sang one of the great anthems of the 1990s. I can still remember the NME describing it as an abide with me for last orders, and you'll be able to hear it again when the Farm play some dates this summer, along with some tracks from their first album in 31 years. Peter Hooton, how lovely to see you.
It's great to see you, yeah. Great to see it again.
The last time that we met, I think, was in maybe the mid-90s, and we were in a pub off of Carnaby Street, and Select magazine, who I was involved with at the time, were doing one of those things we used to call a round table.
That's right, yeah.
Setting the world to rights, and the people there were yourself, Mickey Bereni from Lush, and Marky Smith.
Yeah,
Do you remember it? Who, let me say, drank 11 pints of beer, each followed by a single whiskey chaser. In the course of the afternoon, which wasn't that long, actually. Amazing.
Yeah, it was an interesting afternoon, should we say that, and I got a lot of advice off Marky Smith on what I should and shouldn't be doing, but it was,
Like what? What did he advise you?
Don't let the bastards get you down, these jailers. Don't let them get you down. You're doing well, Scouts. You're doing well. It was all. He didn't like the Manchester scene, did he? At the time, he absolutely hated
he didn't.
It, but he said, "I can see you're different. You're from Liverpool, aren't you? Yeah." It was all good fatherly stuff,
Well, what's sound advice to stand you in good stead? Very nice to see you again, anyway. So, look, we're going to talk about the new tour in a moment, but we're going to take you back to the first gigs that you ever saw. Do you remember the first band you ever saw?
Yeah, I've been trying to remember. I think it was either Cockney Rebel or
good.
the Sensational Alex Harvey band.
Oh, my God. That's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in our school, I went to school in Bootle, and there was tribes in the school. There was the Smoothies, Skinheads, and there was the Trogs and Greebos, But I was in the middle of both of them, and I did get into a bit of prog rock. Everyone was trying to find an obscure band to get into, But I mean, at the time, I heard Cockney Rebel and thought they sounded brilliant, so I championed them. And some of the Smoothies were interested in that. And some of the Greebos were interested in them as well.
Describe what the Smoothies and the Greebos looked like. What did they wear?
The Smoothies were like post-skinhead, suede heads.
Suede heads.
So it was Harrington jackets and Crombies and that type of thing. And the Greebos is exactly what you'd expect them to look like, a heavy metal, a progressive rock band, So
denim jackets.
I had a Catholic taste in that respect. So I was amazed when one of the Smoothies asked me, "Can I borrow your Cockney Rebel album?"
So how did you used to advertise your loyalties to particular groups by? We used to have backpacks, and we used to write their names on the back of school bags and things. Did you do anything like that?
Yeah. That was. I didn't particularly do that on my backpack, but certainly on exercise books, you'd find. I was obsessed with Peter Gabriel, more so than Genesis. But so when Peter Gabriel left Genesis, I'll never listen to Genesis ever again. But I went to see Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in the Liverpool Empire.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure Cockney Rebel was before that.
Oh, right. Okay. When was your first time on stage yourself?
Right. That was. It was the school production of Oliver, believe it or not.
Oh, brilliant!
In which you played? Go on.
I was down to the last two for Oliver, but Mark Lester in the Lionel Bard version had blonde hair, and I didn't have blonde hair, so I'd like to think it was that. But I didn't want the part anyway, because believe it or not, I didn't want to be on stage. I didn't want to be at the front person. I was quite happy to be in the background, so it ended up being one of the Workhouse Boys and one of Fagan's gang, you know.
See, so you know the lyrics to Food, Glorious Food and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Got to pick your pocket or two.
Many years later, Seymour Stein, when he signed us for Side Records in America, our manager, Kevin Sampson, told him I was an expert on Oliver and Sound of Music and that. And he, we'd go out for dinner and he'd get me to sing Food, Glorious Food and got to pick a pocket or two.
Absolutely.
Had you been the Artful Dodger, you would have joined the who is it, David? It's Davy Jones, the Monkees, Gary.
I was the Artful Dodger,
and Dave Hepworth. We're all the Artful Dodger.
Steve Marriott was the Artful Dodger.
Steve Marriott, that's right.
Davy Jones, I would have thought. It was
yeah. So it was the school production of Oliver, but I was in a school band as well, and the band were like,
what were they called?
They were called Breakwind. Believe it or not.
That's a very Christopher Guest joke, isn't it?
It was one of my mates he was the forerunner to Half Man Half Biscuit, no doubt about it. All the songs are about teachers.
Brilliant.
And, the fact you couldn't play table tennis in the dinner hour. So we had this song called Table Tennis, which just went, table tennis, table tennis, table tennis, like a blues number, But he was obsessed with Focus, Jan Ackerman and that type of thing.
Right.
So I was on bass guitar, but I think we rehearsed in the dinner hour and the teachers let us do it. But then they had the lyrics, so we got banned.
So when you first went to Cockney Rebel, can you remember what they did on the Genesis show? Are there any memories that stay with you about the kind of first seeing people on stage, what they did, what they wore?
Yeah, I was, Steve Harley was cool, wasn't he? He was Bowie really. Well, he took a lot of his stuff from Bowie, and I was obsessed with early Bowie, and I think. He just looked the coolest person, I'd seen for a while, and the Genesis one was, I always remember because I had to bunk off from school to get a ticket. And my dad found out I bunked. He said, "You didn't go to school today." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "I found a tin of beans in the waste bin." He said, "You must have been back at dinner time." Because what I did, I was queued up in the morning time to get tickets. And it was very theatrical, wasn't it, Genesis? But Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, I still love the album, even though, I still love the album,
Can you remember what Peter Gabriel was wearing on stage? I can remember seeing him in strange things that made him look like a giant vegetable, big flower heads. It
was a variety of things, but because it was about Rail, the Imperial Aerosol Kid, he was changing all the time, but a lot of it was sometimes it was like streetwear, New York, because Rail, that he was acting the character, Right. But I was just, it was absolutely brilliant,
So what about the whole explosion in Liverpool in the late 70s, Eric's Club and all that? Have you got any memories of that? The Echo and the Bunnymen and the Teardrops?
Yeah, well, I wasn't really close to them. They were like a different type of group, they were all people who went to Eric's regularly. I went to Eric's, but only to see bands. They went there as a club, so I'd go and see bands there. So, I remember seeing the Undertones there. I remember seeing Wayne County and the Electric Chairs there. Right. If you don't want something.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Yes, of course.
Saw Madness there, but you see, we were when we started to go, it was more like the late 70s. So it was more of a, like a mod revival and the ska stuff, and I think the original people who went to Eric's in 76, they were probably sneering at us,
Johnny come lately. That's all.
Well, we talked to Ian Brodie not long ago, and he was saying it was an education for him. He described the whole thing as an education, Eric's.
Well, yeah, Roger Eagle was an absolute genius, and when I started the N magazine, the first interview we went for was Roger Eagle, and to our amazement, he agreed to it, and he was telling us everything was wrong with the music industry, and he was setting up like a warehouse where he had Julian Cope on for 7 nights, And he said it was like a happening, the type of thing that happens in New York. And it was absolute genius, but not many people turned up for all the 7 nights, you see. And he had like loads of videos all around the different rooms in the warehouse. It was like a warehouse club, and it was genius, But Roger also started a club called Adams.
Oh, really?
Which I used to go to as well, which he got a lot of R&B soul stuff over, because that was his true love, soul and reggae,
Yeah.
And his house band was the Frantic Elevators, which we used to see.
Right.
And we used to feel sorry for them because they were playing in front of 50 people. And it was a bit rock and roll.
So you started the magazine rather than a band?
Yeah. The magazine was first, but I left Breakwin because I went off to Leeds Poly to study politics, and everyone drifted apart, So when I came back to Liverpool, I started the magazine, and I wasn't in a band, and there was never really any much intention to be in a band, But after John Lennon was assassinated, I started writing lyrics. I tried that at school. But the English teacher had read them out to the class, my poems, and to much hilarity, and because I was like, I was in the football team and did athletics, and you weren't supposed to write poetry, were you? It was like, and it put me off for years,
You certainly weren't supposed to have it read out to the class by the teacher, because even if it's Wordsworth, you wouldn't want that.
I can't think of any more excruciating agony, actually.
It was his revenge because I refused to do cross-country for him. That was a revenge.
There's a wonderful scene.
Conscientious objector.
There's a wonderful scene in Derry Girls where the English teacher reads out all the girls' poems to the class. Yes. I go clammy when I watch it. Just.
I loved Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I wanted to do that where you stop on the finishing line. And
right.
Yes.
Oh yes, excellent.
I never got around to it though.
But the advantage of starting a magazine was you could presumably get in free to gigs, could you? Things like
that was the idea. That was the idea. But I also went to see Clash in Paris for 7 nights, and they were on with The Beat and War. And the tour manager was a Scouser, so I just went down to see if I could get a ticket. And we started talking. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Liverpool." He said, "Oh, who do you support?" I said, "Liverpool." He said, "How many tickets do you want?" And I got in every night for the 7 nights, and that was during the about 1981, I think it was. So right. I thought I had all these photographs of us backstage with Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. I've got to start a magazine, surely, and pretend I've done an interview with them.
Those pictures are the most valuable thing, really.
Yeah. I mean, they all thought it was with Pete Wilde, you see, because I was from Liverpool, but I didn't really know him then, and but because the tour manager was from Liverpool, they just adopted me, and I was in the Clash dressing room once, and before they arrived, and I was eating a banana from the luxurious spread. I'd never seen anything like it, and I was eating a banana, and I was coming, "Oh, sorry about that, lads," and Joe Summer went, "Take what you like, we're the Clash."
Have a banana.
Fill your boots.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. So going back to the bands, there was a group called the Excitements you were in. Was that the one that became the Farm?
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff did you play?
It was.
Didn't you have a single out produced by Suggs?
That was with the Farm, though.
That was the Farm later.
By then.
Yeah.
It was called. The single was called Hearts and Minds. We met Suggs on the Oxford Road Show. And it was just about the time when him and Chad Smash on the Oxford Road Show, and we did the Oxford Road Show with a track called Memories, and we changed our name from the Excitements because we used to rehearse on a farm just outside a place called McGull, which isn't far from AC Racecourse, really, and so we just ended up calling ourselves the Farm, because we're always going down the farm,
So was it part of the Farm's thing that you were not standoffish, were you? You were. I remember you from those days. I never interviewed you or anything, but it was all the guys from the Farm all said hello, and if you met them in the street, they were never too cool for school. Is that fair to say?
We took our mentors with people like the Clash, and I learnt a lot when I was in Paris. When at the final night of the Clash gig, they had a load of punks and wastrels with them and following them around, and they were trying to get into nightclubs, and the bouncers would be saying, the Clash can come in, but get rid of the punks, and they wouldn't go into any club until they let everyone in.
Right.
A group of the people, and we saw that's what I wanted. Unfortunately, at the time, it was before record companies realised that, an appeal of people who look like they come from a street corner could appeal to people, There was a few people recognised it, like Simon Moran, who became the big promoter. He used to follow us around, like the same way I followed the Clash round, He could see it. Tony Wilson could certainly see it in Manchester because he adopted the Happy Mondays, because he knew of the farm as well. And Bill Drummond had a meeting with us, and Bill Drummond said, look, I want to manage you and do what I say, and I want you to go on stage with tracksuits on and hard dogs. I went, fuck off, Bill. You don't understand this thing about us, do you?
That's fantastic. As in attack dogs, you mean?
Well, I think at the time in New York, the rappers they were always photographed with dogs, weren't they? And
tracksuits.
Status dogs.
I said, no, we're into the Jam and the Clash. We're trying to change society. We don't want that type of image. And I think the nearest thing to that image became East 17, was it? Where they were all caught.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, they had all come. But it took us a few years. That was about 84, 85. It took us a few years. We were always getting help by people like Suggs helped us. Paul Heaton was fantastic to us because it took us to a studio in Hull. And we were going to sign to his label. His label was going to be called the Fair Play Committee on Polydor. And John Williams was the head of Polydor at the time. And he said he wanted the House Martins to have their own label. And we were the first signing, until Stan Collymore, the member of the House Martins, decided to go off to the Outer Hebrides to write children's books. So this is what was happening to us all the time. We were just on the edge of getting the deal, And
you supported Happy Mondays, didn't you, I think? And Stone Roses.
Yeah, we did. That was later on, though. This was when we were we supported the House Martins in 87. And we started off with like a bit of a ska type special sound. That's what we were after. John Peel used to always, say when we did sessions, I told Peter to stop trying to do reggae. But then by the House Martins period, we sound a little bit like the House Martins. But I saw a group that never get the credit, I don't think, and that was Big Audio Dynamite.
All right.
And I saw them in the States in Liverpool, which was a fantastic club, and it just blew me mind. It was hip hop loops and heavy guitar. It's fantastic, and samples from films. As Don Letts and Mick Jones, and it probably what would have been what the Clash would have become, because they were trying that out with Magnificent Seven and things like that, weren't they?
Right. So, what's your big kind of top of the pops, I'm a pop star moment memory? Do you have one?
Yeah, who I saw on top of that? I mean,
no, or you
as a
me?
pop star.
Oh God,
yeah.
Cliff Richard, Christmas 1990. So we were all getting our mum's autographs for Cliff Richard, and he was actually we tried to take the mickey out of him a bit, but he was okay.
So what were you on a TV show with him or something?
Yeah, it was the Top of the Pops TV show.
Right, okay, with Cliff.
We also did the first edition of The Word.
Right.
Where we did Groovy Train, and we had Bill Dean, who was in Brookside.
Right.
Harry Cross, because he was in the video of Groovy Train. We had him sitting off stage reading the paper. Right. Being totally disinterested in the performance, So
who else was on with you? Can you remember?
I can't really remember. No, I think Snap were on at the time. I think Snap. There's a few. I can't really remember who else, but
it was all a blur, really.
It was all a bit of a blur. We'd just come back from Ibiza, and our manager Kevin had convinced our financial backers to do a documentary on Ibiza. So it was all around about that same time, and that was called A Short Film About Chilling, and it had Andy Weatherall in and Terry Farley and various people. And it was great, but it went on Channel 4 the day before Groovy Train was released. So it was like an advert for the farm. But Kevin hadn't told Channel 4 that he was our manager. It was the rock and roll swindle.
Oh, really? Well, Channel 4 a bit miffed that they'd...
No, I think they were happy in the end because it's recognised as one of the great documentaries on that period, you know. But he'd forgotten to tell them. He was the assistant youth commissioner and editor for Channel 4. And he'd forgotten to tell them he was our manager as well.
Yes, I bet.
But it was broadly happy memories. Dave and I talked to Nick Kershaw the other day. It was so funny. We were just asking him about the time he had those hit singles, and we saw so much of him, and he just remembered it as being immensely stressful and full of anxiety, and he was much happier now. But I mean, you look back at that mid-90s period, it was obviously a riot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, but it was immensely stressful because, being the singer and I'm doing the interview, it was great going to America, but you know why people do press conferences? Because you're answering the same question.
Yes.
And interviews, the same thing, and that's why people end up doing press conferences, because you got to sing in the night, and your voice can easily go croaky and hoarse. So it was stressful, but it was also an indication. We've been telling publishers and record companies that our image had omni appeal. That's what we called it. And Brian Morrison, the publisher, was going to sign us, and he was, I can't see it, because we had tweed jackets on, cord jackets, and cagoules and training shoes, exactly what the image that Oasis popularised in 93, 94, completely opposite to what the indie look was at the time, But they just couldn't see it, So by 1990, when we started our success, but it was off our own bat. We had a financial backer, and we set our own record label up. And Jamie Reid from the Sex Pistols covers, he came in he lived in Liverpool at the time, and he was a mate of Carl, our bass player, and he came in and went, "This is punk rock." We didn't have an A&R department. No one knew what was going on. When people used to ring up for the A&R department, people on the phone would be going, "Do you want the A&R department?" and start laughing. It was like, it was chaos. It was organised chaos, which seemed great at the time. But when you start looking at, if that company that we licensed the tracks to in Australia, Spain, if they paid us or what?
Yeah.
And at a tangent, I just got to ask you about All Together Now, because as you were saying, you founded the fanzine The End, and then you wrote for Liverpool, their Match Day magazine. You couldn't have been a more fervent Liverpool supporter, but you allowed Everton to use that as their anthem. Is that because you were born in Everton? I mean, what was behind that?
No, it was because it wasn't the first time a football team had used it. When Everton used it, it was probably the 6th or 7th time. Arsenal were the first to use it. Then the Labour Party used it for the disastrous 1992.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
And so lots of people had used it, and they just asked us, and in the end, we had a guitarist called Keith Mullen, who was an Evertonian, and he'd done The Last Day of the Cop, and Ian Rush's Testimonial, and he said it's payback time. And so I asked my dad, and my dad's been a season ticket holder at Anfield since 1962, and he said, "Well, if you don't let them use it, you're being a bit of a hypocrite, aren't you? Because it's two enemies coming together, shaking hands."
Yes, that's right.
True.
So in the end, Liverpool.
I like the idea you have to ask your dad. I think can he ask his dad?
The worst advice he ever gave me, because even when it was used by Sky when Liverpool won the league recently, and All Together Now was used as the end credits, and lots of people on the internet going, "That's an Everton," but it's not.
God.
For me, it's an internationalist song. Flamengo adopted it in South America. Their ultras adopted it. I don't know why or how, but they did, and lots of different teams.
Is there any great benefit to this? I mean, apart from it, it's just sentimental. I mean, you don't make any money out of a crowd all singing something.
Everton, the company that released the track went into liquidation 6 months after they released it, so we never got a penny off it. We'd usually have asked for an advance, you see.
Right.
in the music industry. But because it was Everton, we thought nothing could go wrong here.
It's football. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, the company who they did it on behalf of for the players' pool, they went into liquidation. You know, but
It was used as the anthem for the.
I see it as a song for everyone. It's an instrumental song.
No, fine, absolutely.
And it was used as the anthem for the Euros, I think, 2004. But what does it feel like when you hear a stadium singing that? It must be a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, it was never really. It was adopted in 2004 by the FA, but the England fans never really adopted it because it's about getting on with the Germans, isn't it? It's about working class solidarity.
Right.
They want to sing about bombing Germany, don't they? So they never really adopted it. They never really adopted it.
You never know. It may come back. It may come back.
The FA did tell us that they were going to use it for the whole tournament in 1996 when it was in England. But because Everton had used it, they dropped the idea. So then they commissioned 3 lines. Otherwise, it would have been all together now for the whole tournament. You know.
Well, yeah.
Well.
But you wouldn't let the World Cup use it, would you? The Qatar World Cup.
No. There's some bridges too far. You know.
No, fair enough.
I just think that it was wrong. It would have been wrong. So when we get asked, well, can you let them use it? We look into the politics of the people using it, and
right.
That's,
So there is still a we. I mean, is there a kind of, because the farm broke up and then reassembled and so forth. Has there always been a kind of an office and,
No, the office disappeared in about 94, 95, but we all went off to do various things, like Roy, the drummer, very successful film producer. He did lots of different films. There was one on BBC Two the other night, The Last Bus. He produced that. Also, Sometimes Always Never, which was directed by our bass player.
Right.
So there's a lot of collaborations going on. Keith is now one of the heads of management at Lipper, which is McCartney's place.
The performing arts place.
Yeah,
right.
so he's on first name terms with Paul, when Paul arrives with Bruce Springsteen the other week.
Right.
Thumbs up, So, everyone's gone on to do other things. Steve has done a lot of dance music under different names and worked in the early days with Mike DeScala, who was Camel Fat. So everyone's gone on to do various things.
And it's the same lineup, isn't it, that made the last record? I mean, it's amazing, really, that the same people have got back together 31 years later to make a new record. It's very unusual.
And no one's really bitching on social media about each other.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's been no major falling out. Is that true?
No, that's right, yeah. And it's, we've had our disagreements. And
I'm sure.
Whatever, but, we've kept as a gang, really. And, that's what we were trying to tell these record companies. The group that cut across everyone, for me, was the Jam. They went from NME readers, melody makers, sounds readers, to the council estates of the country, and said the farm's got that same, and it's only been, they've only realised that since the success of Oasis, really,
Yeah.
That someone could, because when we were going, it was long overcoats, and that was the indie look, wasn't it? Spiky hair and long overcoats. No one looked like the farm. We were like the outsiders in Liverpool music, really.
It's the Mac McCulloch look.
Yeah, and we get on great with Mac, but in the 80s there was a few arguments with Mac,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So there was a track, I just want to ask you about one track on the record. I think it's called World Without You.
Yeah.
And that was inspired by the deaths of Lou Reed and David Bowie, which obviously had a big impact on you.
Yeah, it was Bowie, really. And then, when I was reading about Lou Reed, his last words were like, take me into the light. So that's one of the lyrics in it, So, I was thinking of, when you're growing up and you're a kid, it's about mortality, isn't it? And you don't think, but you think Bowie's always going to be there, don't you? You think he's going to live till he's 90, or he's going to have get sent up into space and live forever. That was the sentiments behind it. A world without you, so a world without the likes of that creativity. And sadly, recently we've had a lot more legends really passing on, haven't we?
So this is a new record. Your first one in how long?
Since '94.
Okay.
So we started. We did the Justice Tonight band in 2011, 2012 with Mick Jones, and that was to raise awareness for Hillsborough. And it's the first time Mick had ever done Clash songs, and he said, "I want the Farm to be my back, the band." So it was the Farm, Pete Wiley, and so Pete Wiley would do a few songs, we'd do a few songs of our own, and then we'd do 6 or 7 Clash songs. And it was absolutely magnificent. And,
that must have been such fun.
And Mick was like the Pied Piper, wherever he went. In Cardiff, we played, and James Dean Bradfield got up. In Manchester, before they played Heaton Park, John Squire and Ian Brown got up, went to Sheffield, and it was Richard Hawley and Reverend and the Makers. In Glasgow, it was Glass Vegas. In London, it was Primal Scream, and various members of the Clash appeared as well. And everywhere we went, it was like, Mick Jones has asked us to play, and they were there within a shot, And it was fantastic, and it did really. This was before all the Hillsborough inquests became news, so it was like it was still a cause that was close to our hearts, but also wasn't that well publicised. People, David Cameron was saying it's like looking for a black cat in a dark room. There's nothing there. Until the independent panel reported on the injustices of it. That was an important tour for us. It meant something. And Joe used to give us little pep talks. He talked in football terms because he's a big QPR fan. Mick, he might have talked about it when he was in the Clash football, but he's a big QPR fan. He was going, we're playing the UK, but we need to get in the Champions League. We need to go to Europe. And so that's what we did in Stone Roses.
That's rich talk from a QPR fan.
It is.
So we went to the San Siro with Stone Roses and Dublin and Leon. We played in Leon in a Roman amphitheatre. And Eric Cantona got up and sang, "Should I Stay or Should I Go?"
Oh.
And it never made any publicity, because if I had pushed him off stage, it would have been all over the news, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Liverpool fan pushes United legend. But it never made the news. It made the Liverpool Echo and the Manchester Evening News, and that was
That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. I never knew, but that's a fantastic story.
But he's slightly faded from the consciousness, Cantona, because he was so famous.
He was. But
then came the sardines and the trawler.
Oh, yeah.
And that did change things a bit, actually.
It's odd, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
He was, he went out the limelight, but he did documentaries that were only shown on Al Jazeera, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Football Rebels, it was called. So it was
he does all kinds of interesting things, but it's very low profile.
It was like footballers like Socrates, who tried to change Brazilian society through their fame as footballers. And that was the documentaries about. I think you can get them on YouTube. They're well worth looking at.
Right. So did that rekindle your desire to get the Farm back together and make a record?
Yeah,
and so forth?
We started doing festivals, and then we started introducing new songs, just testing the water, really, to see, if there was a lull in the crowd, or people went to the bar or whatever. But they were going down really well. So we decided, we've got 3 or 4 new songs. We nearly got half an album here, and so that's when we, especially during COVID, we decided, we'll start writing new stuff. And Keith met Nile Rodgers. You can definitely feel a Nile Rodgers feel on the album. Keith met Nile Rodgers doing a masterclass at Lipper. And then he came the next rehearsals. He came in with his guitar, playing like Nile Rodgers.
He does that, doesn't he? Nobody enters a room like Nile Rodgers.
No,
he makes his own fanfare, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I went to see him at the arena in Liverpool, and he was like a preacher.
Yes, he does.
It was a spiritual experience.
Yes, extraordinary. So what's the record called? You may as well plug it.
Yeah, it's called Let the Music Take Control.
Right.
And the reason I wrote that song, Let the Music Take Control, is when politicians all over during COVID, take back control or whatever. And I was thinking, no, don't let politicians, they do enough damage. Let the music take control. And that was the idea of that. It was during Black Lives Matter. One of the lines in it is, the highest walls broken down by R&B and soul. Because I'm the chair of the Beatles Legacy Group in Liverpool for the City Council. And we're always trying to educate people that the Beatles got everything from Black America.
Black American girl groups.
You know,
oddly enough.
Yeah, a lot of the time. And Motown. And there's clips.
Well, the recent 64 documentary makes that point very heavily. Quite rightly, too. Yeah.
But, during Black Lives Matter, there was a lot of debate on the internet, wasn't it, about black culture. And a lot of racists were saying, but I always used to say, without the Beatles, without black culture and black Motown and, there would be no Beatles, you've got to... I didn't realise that. And I do music tours of the city now.
You do?
Do you?
Yeah. And we go to Gambia. It's the alternative music tour. It's not a Beatles tour.
Right.
We do early Beatles. So we go to Gambia Terrace and places like that. But I play the tracks that influenced the early Lennon, McCartney and Harrison. People like Ray Charles and...
So what's your favourite site that you take people to on your Liverpool tour?
Favourite site is probably the State. There's a mural called the Pool just off Matthew Street. So it's probably around that area. So the Pool is, Carl Jung said Liverpool was the pool of life.
Yes, of course.
In 1927. But no one took any notice of it really in 1927 because there was no music, there was no nothing. It was only when the Beatles became famous, people started harping back to this. And Deaf School were big advocates of this, and we got a mural done in that area with the Pool, it's called, because during the mid-70s, after the Beatles and Merseybeat had disappeared, Deaf School, there was this revival of Liverpool music. And I was actually out with Steve Lindsay, Mr. Average, the bass player, on Saturday. I haven't been out with him before, but he contacted me and we went for a drink, and, Deaf School, Paul Denoyer said in his book, he wonders place, there's only two groups that matter. That's the Beatles and Deaf School.
He really firmly believes that.
Yeah. No.
I think he's missed out the real thing there, and the farm, of course. And the bunny men, and...
Of course.
But, I understand this point because you see, the problem with Deaf School is punk rock came along.
Absolutely. Their timing...
They spent too long making a record. They spent about 18 months making a record, didn't they?
Yeah.
And by Beatles, that time...
Do you know the Beatles connection?
Go on.
Derek Taylor was there in our place.
Yes, he was, wasn't he? Yes.
He was the Beatles press officer, wasn't he?
Do you know, it's interesting. We were talking the other day about Bebop Deluxe, who were similarly obliterated by the advent of punk. Bebop Deluxe was starting to get talked about, and then punk came along. Deaf School had their bit of publicity, and then punk came along.
Yeah. But, I mean...
So hard not to feel bitter about it.
Yes.
Yeah. But, there's so many things like that, isn't there? There's so many. Dr. Feelgood, though, survived, didn't he?
Well, it's because they were seen as the kind of forerunners of it, weren't they? Yeah. Whereas, think about Dr. Feelgood, they weren't too colourful. The thing about Deaf School is they were very colourful.
Yeah.
And suddenly punk came along, it was not colourful, it was monochrome.
Yeah, they were very art school, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything about them was everything that punk was meant to be getting rid of. Whereas, Dr. Feelgood were part of the DNA, really.
Yeah.
So, what can people expect from these dates then? What are the things you always play?
Well, we always play all together now, of course, and Groovy Train. But we played the last few weeks. We played. We do about 10 songs during these festivals, and half of them are new ones, and they go down well. So it's not like it's an acid test. Right? I say, this is Jukebox Geordie. What do you think of the song? We're going to play it to you. At the end of it, you get big cheers. So hopefully that's an indication that people like them.
I can see a sea of bucket hats now.
Yeah. That image. That was associated with Manchester, but it was also originated in Liverpool.
Yeah.
That's the thing the Mondays always say now. They'll say it now. They never said it in interviews in 1990. He said the Farm had a massive influence on us, you know.
Well, I'm glad we've stumbled into Manchester-Liverpool rivalry at last.
Yes.
I thought we'd never get there.
Let's do another hour.
We have always got on great with Manchester groups, more so than Liverpool groups, believe it or not. You know, there was always, we went on tour with the Mondays, went on tour with the Roses. I don't think we've been on tour with a Liverpool group.
No, might be envy. You never know.
This is it.
Very good to talk to you. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, it's been great. And it's been superb. And, you know, I was listening to the Stuart McConey one. He had a book launch in Liverpool last week. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You know?
He's so good, isn't he?
He's very good.
Terribly funny. The story about him asking Paul if he'd rather have been in Cherry in the basement. Right, he's told that story so many times. It just gets better and better and better. It's just brilliant.
Well, he gave us our first interview in the NME.
Oh, right. Well.
So I've got, you know, it was James Brown who got us on the front cover, and it was the brilliant front cover when Harry met Scally. And it was us on the front cover with Bill Dean from Brookside. You know.
Oh, right.
Oh, great.
But Stuart did the interview, yeah.
Right.
That's
well, look,
good.
nice to talk to you. And
no, it's been great, yeah.
As we say, best of luck with the dates and the album.